immediately to save the bees and protect our pollinators. California's beekeepers lost almost 42% of their colonies last year. It was one of the worst years on record. Evidence is mounting that pesticides are a critical piece of this problem. The chemicals are harmful to bee populations and dangerous for humans to ingest. Loss of pollinators endangers upwards of $15 billion annually in state agricultural production, and it's already limiting yields and driving up food prices. California has a robust infrastructure for evaluating and regulating these pesticides through the Department of Pesticide Regulation. However, we all know that there are gaps that allow the use of harmful chemicals without much needed oversight. These systemic gaps are what we are here to address today. I'm introducing AB 2146, specifically targeting pesticides that have been shown to severely harm the population across the world, neonicotinoids. This bill will ban the use of harmful neonicotinoids on all non-agricultural plants. This is an unregulated area of this pesticide use. The ban will be on the big 5 neonicotinoids with proven harmful effects. These neonicotinoids are already partially banned in the European Union, and New Jersey has passed a ban on these pesticides in non-agricultural uses. So we are not the first, as California likes to be. Many people cultivate gardens hoping to improve pollinator populations without realizing that household pesticides can kill entire colonies. AB 2146 strategically targets chemical use that causes unmitigated harm to pollinators without targeting any part of our food supply. With this legislation, we're taking the long view to build a sustainable and biodiverse California, and as I said at the opening, to save the bees. And before I move on to the next speaker, I want to talk a little bit about what this means historically. I want to remind everyone what happened with DDT, how Rachel Carson's Silent Spring spurred a decade of research and advocacy that led to the US banning DDT in 1972 and the creation of the EPA itself. Before 1972, over half the states, including California, had placed limits on DDT. States often are the first to act when it comes to harmful pesticides. It was Californian President Richard Nixon who drastically expanded the environmental regulatory apparatus to check the use of these toxic substances. One thing to keep in mind is DDT was incredibly effective in killing unwanted pests, as neonics are, but that didn't stop it from causing cancer, killing bird populations, and devastating biodiversity. Even with the advent of stronger regulations, we've not moved past the use of toxic chemicals with unforeseen effects. But what this history can teach us is that biodiversity and the safety of our planet, our animals, and humans can and should be a bipartisan issue that we can all get behind. With that, I look forward to getting this bill to the governor's desk for his signature and beginning the work that needs to be done to get California to where we hope to be in protecting our state's biodiversity. Our first speaker is Laura Deehan, State Director of Environment California. Laura?
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Kahan, for those words and for your leadership in working to save the bees in our state. I am so proud to stand with you and with the other co-sponsors of this bill, AB 2146, with NRDC and the California Native Plant Society, to strongly support action that would protect the bees as well as the butterflies, birds, and the whole delicate web of life here in our state and on our planet. We have to care about this because bees and other pollinators are critical. They play a critical role in our natural world, from pollinating the flowering plants that feed so much, provide the food that we eat, as well as filling our world with beauty and wonder. Since this relatively new class of pesticides, neonicotinoids or neonics, has been in use, there have been serious impacts to bee populations. We've seen more than a third of honeybee populations wiped out every year. And now 1 in 4 bee species is at risk of extinction, including many of California's more than 1,600 species of native bees. we've seen a similar loss of the number of butterflies, like the monarch butterfly, which used to number in the millions, migrating up and down the western coast, to now dropping to just a tiny fraction of those numbers. And recent scientific studies also point to neonics as being culpable and a significant contributor to the loss of America's birds. And our skies now have 30% fewer birds in them flying across the air than they did in just the 1970s. The drastic decline in these numbers is truly disturbing. However, the neonics that are still approved for daily application, everyday application on lawns and gardens, as well as the golf courses in our state, is basically, unregulated. And so unknowingly, people may be harming the very bees and butterflies and birds that they're hoping to attract in their gardens. By passing AB 2146, the California legislature can provide a lifeline to the pollinators and other key species just in the nick of time. So next, I wanted to introduce Lucas Rhoads, who is a staff attorney with NRDC and helps to lead their Pollinator Initiative.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you, Assemblymember, for authoring this really critical bill to protect California's people and environment from harmful and unnecessary uses of neonics. NRDC is really proud to co-sponsor this bill alongside Environment California and the California Native Plant Society, and we look forward to working with you over the next year to get it passed. Now, as Laura just discussed, the impacts of neonics on bees are critically important. But as she mentioned, the impacts also extend well beyond bees and really contribute to the broader biodiversity crisis that we're facing. In California, ecological contamination with neonics is widespread, including in urban and suburban areas. Water testing by the California Department of Pesticide Regulation found at least one neonic in 92% of water samples in Orange, LA, and San Diego counties. And neonics are found at levels that really hollow out aquatic ecosystems, eliminating insects that fish, birds, and other species rely on for food. As a result of these food chain effects and direct toxicity, as Laura mentioned, neonics really contribute significantly to declines in birds in recent years, and that's especially true for insect-eating populations and grassland species. But people are not immune to the effects of neonics either. Neonics are designed to be neurotoxic, meaning they target the insect nerve cell. The same receptors that they target in insects are actually present in the human central nervous system. Now, half of the American population is exposed to a neonic on any given day. That is really concerning because neonics have been linked with increased risk of developmental, neurological, and reproductive harms in mammals. Now, California can be a leader in protecting its environment and residents from neonics. In just the past year, Maine and New Jersey were the first states to pass legislation banning most non-agricultural uses of neonics. California can be the next, and as the most populous state in the country, the most impactful. And with that, I will hand things off to Andrea Williams, Director of Biodiversity Initiatives at the California Native Plant Society.
Thank you and good afternoon. On behalf of the California Native Plant Society, I want to thank Assemblymember Bauer-Kahan for her leadership in authoring this important bill, which marks a much needed step in protecting the vital plant-pollinator relationships that support California's remarkable biodiversity. We're proud to be joining the Assemblymember, NRDC, and Environment California as co-sponsors. Many people are surprised to learn that California is one of the world's 36 biodiversity hotspots. We're fortunate to have more types of native plants and animals than any other state, and that includes our bees, some of which are found nowhere else on Earth. This is a special place for nature, and because of that, we have a lot to lose. From the imperiled monarch butterfly to our fuzzy bumblebees, the health of pollinators is directly tied to the integrity of plants. Neonics disrupt that integrity, sometimes for years following application. Scientists have found neonics in woody plants as many as 6 years post-treatment, and the effects on our native bees are pernicious. Neonics linger in soil and can be taken up by nearby plants, and as other speakers have shared, they can even make it into our waterways. That's why many of the California Native Plant Society's 11,000 members have advocated against neonics for several years. Neonics represent the opposite of what most Californians would choose for their landscapes. In fact, through our work with our communities, we've learned that the number one reason they garden with native plants is to create habitat for birds and butterflies and other living creatures. Humans are natural stewards of the land who want to support the living world, and this bill makes it easier for people to avoid unintended harmful impacts. Thanks again to Assemblymember Bauer-Kahan for introducing a specific and important way to help protect life, literally from the ground up.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, 2 years into Zoom, I still love hearing the background noises in everyone's homes. So thank you to everyone for speaking about the importance of this bill and the work that we are trying to accomplish through this legislation, that we will accomplish through this legislation. We're now happy to take questions from any reporters that are on the line, if you have any. If you'd like to be called on to ask a question, we're gonna have to unmute you, but you can just put your name in an outfit in the chat and we can call on you, and the magical people who control Zoom will help us unmute you. So just give it a minute if anyone wants to put their name in the chat if they have a question for us. Oh, we have someone raise their hand. Let's see if I can figure that out.
Yes, hey there, this is Colby Brummel at Politico in Sacramento.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting this on. This seems like a pretty straightforward bill, of course, but I wanted to see like if y'all are anticipating any kind of opposition to this, and kind of if you've worked with any of the pesticide manufacturers and kind of what their reaction is or maybe could be to this.
So we're just introducing the bill, and we will obviously work with all stakeholders moving forward, but we anticipate that this is an important change and one that, again, we're not the first state to do it. So we're hopeful that New Jersey will have paved the way to easy passage of this legislation. It is, as you mentioned, narrow. We're narrowing it to non-agricultural uses. So we hope that we are leaving the Department of Pesticide Regulation to work on the agricultural uses, and we are focusing on the gaping hole in that regulatory scheme. And so we're looking forward to those conversations with stakeholders moving forward. Now I've got to figure out if anyone else raised their hand. But we have not seen anyone go in the chat, so I'll scroll through, and if we have no more hands, then we'll close the press conference. Looks like we don't. So thank you all.
There is one question in the chat.
Okay.
Are you able to see it?
I cannot. So do you want to? Sarah,
One moment. Larry Altman said in the chat, what products are these found in? Are they common for regular people to use in their homes? Perhaps that could go to one of our experts. Maybe Lucas?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to answer that. So basically, any use you can think of for a pesticide, there is a neonic. When we're talking about lawn uses, home and garden uses, they're commonly in these products. And those specific outdoor non-agricultural uses are the ones that this bill targets. They're also used in some indoor, bed bug products, things like that, or structural uses inside. But this bill really carves those indoor uses out of the effect of the bill and really focuses on those outdoor non-agricultural uses. But to answer your question, yes, they're used in all sorts of those non-agricultural pesticides that people might find in home and garden stores.
And I'll note that often they're used before there's ever a need in non-agricultural uses for these pesticides. And so we believe that actually this will lead to a drastic reduction in pesticide use for non-agricultural uses. And there are already alternatives on the market if folks want to turn to alternative pesticides for non-agricultural uses. Oh, Colby has a follow-up. I was supposed to be able to see the chat, but I can't, so I apologize, but I have a team helping me. Colby, go ahead. Is Colby able to unmute?
Yep, I just got the prompt. It took a while. I was waiting.
No worries.
Yeah, if I can unmute on my own, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to see like if anyone on the call knew, how many or kind of how much of these non-ag neonics are used and sold like in the state every year, and just what some of the names of these products even are, like if we kind of know these kind of off the shelf.
Yeah, Lucas, you want to take that first?
Sure. So unfortunately, this is kind of another gap in that the California Department of Pesticide Regulation has one of the best pesticide tracking systems in the country, and yet they do not require reporting of a lot of non-agricultural uses. So we don't have a firm number on exactly how much is used. But when you look at the water contamination in urban and suburban areas, that's a really, really strong indication that a lot of this contamination is coming from non-agricultural sources. Like I mentioned, in the LA region, DPR detected at least one neonic in 92% of water samples. So they're really widespread in water, indicating that these are really, widely used in non-agricultural settings. So as for the brand names, they're not quite as they have come off patent. So there are a lot of generic products out there. One imidacloprid product that I can speak to is called Merit. So that's a neonic lawn product. But a lot of them, other ones are not necessarily ones that you would recognize. But as I said, really tons of over-the-counter insecticides do contain these products. But as the Assembly member noted, there are, generally less harmful alternatives out there.
And then I can just add that some retailers have already taken action to phase out these dangerous products from their shelves. So Lowe's and Home Depot are a couple of the big retailers that have taken proactive action after pressure from the public. But then you can still find these products on Amazon. You can search for the chemicals that are listed in the bill on Amazon, and you'll see a whole bunch of products with thousands of reviews come up. So it's pretty clear that people are still buying these, mostly without even knowing that they can cause so much harm to our ecosystems, to wildlife.
And that reminds me of.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, as a home gardener, I've learned a lot from our working on this legislation that I wasn't aware of the things I was putting on my garden. But I will say that as much retailers are moving away from these, and the companies that sell these pesticides also are. Scott's Miracle-Gro, for example, is moving away from the use of neonicotinoids. So, that's a brand that I'm sure many people are aware of, and we are seeing a move. But we want to make sure that people like me who are gardening and don't want to be harming bee populations are not doing so in a way that we're not even aware of.
And in addition to that, a lot of landscapers and professional pesticide users use neonics without people even realizing that that's what's being used on their property. And so while it's fantastic that Home Depot and other home garden stores are taking some of these products off the shelves, these products are still available to landscapers and other groups. And so you might not know it, but they might be applied on your lawn or in your garden.
Awesome. So I'll ask my team if anybody else has any questions, because I'm apparently not seeing it. Okay, we're all done. Great. Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you so much for your engagement and your questions. And we look forward to a continued robust conversation as the legislation moves through the Assembly and then the Senate.